given the actions of America, particularly on tariffs recently, do you trust Donald Trump, and can Australia trust Donald Trump?
Well, certainly, the facts are we're in a position where Canada has a comprehensive free trade agreement with the United States. There's certain protocols under that agreement. If temporary tariffs or other tariffs are put in place, those have not been followed. So that agreement effectively has been broken in the short term by U.S. actions. That's the fact. That would be acknowledged, I think, by all sides. Maybe slightly more diplomatic terms would be used, but that's the reality.
Something remarkable just happened in Australia. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, a Canadian Prime Minister stood inside the Australian Parliament and delivered a major address. And what followed was a sight that said everything about the moment Mark Carney is having on the world stage. Long applause, standing appreciation, and an invitation from one of Canada's closest democratic partners to help shape the future of the global order. But the speech itself was only the beginning. Because later that same day, standing beside the Australian Prime Minister, Carney delivered something even more striking. He openly acknowledged that the United States had broken the protocols of its own trade agreement with Canada, a statement that lands like a political earthquake when the country involved is Donald Trump's America. And it tells you exactly why leaders across the world are inviting Mark Carney to their capitals. Because at a moment when the global system feels unstable and unpredictable, Carney is positioning Canada as something very different, a country that speaks plainly, builds alliances, and refuses to be pushed around. The day began inside one of the most prestigious chambers in the democratic world, the Australian Parliament. And from the moment Mark Carney began speaking, it was clear this was not just another diplomatic visit. Carney spoke about the deep bond between Canada and Australia, two democracies on opposite sides of the world, but bound by shared history, shared institutions, and shared values. He reminded the chamber how Canadians and Australians had stood together in some of the darkest moments of modern history, from Normandy to Korea to Afghanistan. But the real message of the speech was about the future, because according to Carney, the international system that Canada and Australia helped build after the Second World War is now facing a profound rupture because of people like Donald Trump. And in this new world, middle powers like Canada and Australia cannot simply wait for great powers to decide their fate. They must shape the future themselves.
And the question today for middle powers like us is whether we establish the conventions and help write the new rules that will determine our security and prosperity, or let the hegemons dictate outcomes. In the new global environment, the ability to form effective coalitions is becoming a central strategic capability. Great powers can compel, but compulsion comes with costs, both reputational and financial. Middle powers can convene, but not everyone can. In the post-rupture world, the nations that are trusted and can work together will be quicker to the punch, more effective in their responses, and more proactive in shaping outcomes, and ultimately, those countries will be more secure and prosperous.
Carney then laid out why Canada and Australia are uniquely positioned in this changing world. Both are resource giants, both are trusted democracies, and both possess enormous strategic assets that the modern world desperately needs. Critical minerals, energy resources, advanced technology sectors, and vast pools of capital. Carney described how the two countries together produce enormous shares of global lithium, uranium, and iron ore, resources that power everything from batteries to artificial intelligence systems. And instead of competing, he said the two nations should act as strategic collaborators, building resilient supply chains, strengthening economic security, and ensuring that democratic nations remain leaders in the technologies of the future. But this growing partnership between Canada and Australia carries another implication, one that directly affects Donald Trump's strategy. Because Trump's economic pressure tactics rely heavily on one thing: dependence. The more dependent countries are on the United States for trade, energy, technology, or security, the more leverage Washington holds. But when countries like Canada and Australia begin building stronger economic and strategic ties with each other and with other partners across Europe and Asia, that leverage starts to weaken. Supply chains diversify, markets expand, and the ability to pressure countries through tariffs or economic threats becomes far less effective. So what Carney was describing here wasn't just a partnership. It was part of a broader strategy, a strategy designed to ensure that Canada and its allies can thrive in a world where they are no longer vulnerable to the decisions of any single great power. And that is exactly why partnerships like this one matter so much right now.
We're blessed with abundance of foundational metals that power the batteries, the EVs, the smartphones, the AI systems of this century. Together, we produce 1/3 of global lithium, 1/3 of global uranium, 40% of iron ore. In fairness, that's largely you. But we'll take credit for it. And we have a combined war chest right now of $25 billion to fast-track global projects. Globally, we're 1 and 2 in the most attractive we're 1 and 2 as the most attractive mining investment jurisdictions in the world. We are the world's critical mineral superpowers. Now, in the old world, and even to a degree today, the temptation would be to see each other as competitors. In the new world, we should, as Prime Minister Albanese has suggested, be strategic collaborators to boost investments, accelerate technological cooperation, enhance supply chain resilience, expand our domestic processing abilities, and to reinforce each of our strategic autonomy.
The most explosive moment of the day came during the press conference that followed, because a reporter asked Carney directly about trust in Donald Trump. And Carney responded with a statement that cut straight to the heart of the issue. He said that the United States had imposed tariffs in ways that violated the protocols of the very trade agreement it signed with Canada. In other words, the rules of the relationship had been broken. That admission is incredibly significant because Trump's strategy has relied heavily on tariffs and economic pressure to force other countries into concessions. But by publicly acknowledging that those actions broke agreed protocols, Carney reframed the entire situation. It's no longer just a dispute, it becomes a question of trust. And when trust breaks down in international agreements, countries start looking for new partners, which is exactly what Canada has been doing across Europe, Asia, and the Indo-Pacific.
Given the actions of America, particularly on tariffs recently, do you trust Donald Trump, and can Australia trust Donald Trump?
Well, certainly, the facts are we're in a position where Canada has a comprehensive free trade agreement with the United States. There's certain protocols under that agreement. If temporary tariffs or other tariffs are put in place, those have not been followed. So that agreement effectively has been broken in the short term by U.S. actions. That's a fact that would be acknowledged, I think, by all sides. Maybe slightly more diplomatic terms would be used, but that's the reality.
Then came another moment that revealed just how willing Carney is to challenge Washington's decisions. When asked about the escalating conflict with Iran, Carney made a crucial distinction. He said the offensive military actions taken by the United States and Israel were not coordinated with Canada or other allies. And Canada was not part of those actions. This statement matters enormously because alliances are supposed to function through consultation, through coordination, through shared strategy. When decisions of global consequence are made without allies, it signals a deeper shift in how global power is being exercised. And Carney made it clear that Canada will always stand by its allies when necessary, but it will also speak honestly when those alliances are not respected.
Question for Prime Minister Carney. You've said that Canada will not participate in U.S. military action in Iran. So can you definitively say that's going to remain the case, even if hostilities broaden, escalate, or are prolonged?
You've asked a fundamental hypothetical in a conflict that can spread very broadly. Today's events, recent events, point to that. So one can never categorically rule out participation. We will stand by our allies when it makes sense. There's a distinction between the offensive actions that were taken and are being taken by the United States and Israel, that were taken by them without consultation with Canada, with other allies, and we're not party to those actions. But we will always defend Canadians. We will always stand by and defend our allies when called upon.
When you step back and look at the entire day, the message becomes very clear. Mark Carney arrived in Australia not just as Canada's Prime Minister, but as a leader whose voice is increasingly shaping global conversations. He addressed the Australian Parliament. He received rare bipartisan respect from lawmakers, and he spoke openly about the realities facing the international system. At a time when global alliances are being tested and traditional rules are being challenged, Carney is positioning Canada as a country that believes in cooperation, transparency, and strong partnerships. And judging by the reception he received in Canberra, it is a message that much of the world is ready to hear. And moments like this are exactly why Mark Carney is increasingly becoming one of the most talked about leaders on the global stage. Whether it's standing in front of the Australian Parliament, strengthening alliances across continents, or speaking openly about the challenges facing the international order, Carney is positioning Canada as a country that refuses to be pushed around